Well, my fruits, the press have been having a field day over this jumpsuit, haven't they? This twin jumpsuit that seemed to draw inspiration from somewhere. Was it a celebrity? Was it an activist? One wonders, where did she draw the inspiration of all the gowns in the world that she could be offered? You'd think it was Theresa Romer's wardrobe, my dear, but no, she plumped for Kate Middleton. Well, that's what the press seemed to suggest. Perhaps it's unfair to make that comparison, but you can tell me what you think, and you can tell me who you think wore it best. I know what I think. As I've said before, I have no problem whatsoever with rich people spending lots of money on their clothes. None at all, my dear. But it's the messaging, isn't it, when they go for this humble brand of humility. And you see them wear this dress, this monochrome jumpsuit, which the price tag of this is apparently $4,800. $4,800. I must bear in mind that it could have been gifted to her, but if they went out and purchased it themselves, first of all, they were ripped off, because I'm sure the quality of it is wonderful. What was the design of this thing? Gabriella Hearst, the Vicky jumpsuit. I'm sure the quality of it is second to none, my dear, but to be honest with you, I've seen more aesthetically pleasing jumpsuits in Primark. Couldn't she have got together a few more lunch pails to hand out to the homeless? She could have handed out 4,800 of them, couldn't she, instead of spending all those dollars on a jumpsuit? I'm not going to outright accuse her of copying Catherine, because I'm sure someone out there will pick out something Catherine wore and make the same comparison about Meghan, so it is what it is. But what I will say is that I do think it is rather unwise of Meghan to allow herself to be seen in something approaching the kind of garb that Catherine's been wearing, because it's only going to draw unfavourable comparisons, isn't it, my dears? She's never going to win that particular war. By the way, do you love this ring? Fresh from the vintage fair, a lovely find, saved by our good old friend Secondhand Susie. I know she's becoming a bit of a legend among you foodies. Old Secondhand Susie, she did really well. I was particularly, I didn't have a pink ring. Well, not one that you can wear on your finger anyway, my dear. I didn't have a pink ring, and I absolutely loved this. It was a little bit on the tight side when I first put it on, but I experimented yesterday and it does ease off. So I won't have to run to the firemen this time to prize it off. Isn't it lovely? So I'm going to be after some more pinky stuff at the moment. Oh, yes, and I'm mentioning it because I bought it with the tip money that some of you have sent. This is my birthday week, just to say thank you to those of you who sent me a birthday tip from the tip jar or from the thanks button, which is now available just for this 1 or 2 weeks. You are very sweet fruits. Thank you, my dear, for keeping me in ice gems. What I did notice in that jumpsuit is that the arms are looking leaner and more toned. When I mentioned the parade in Wyoming, whoever it was sitting on the curb in a hat from behind, I don't think we saw Meghan's face, but a few of you told me in the comments that could never be Meghan. Never, never, never. It's a double. The arms are too slim. Well, actually, they look rather the same in these photographs. I want to make it crystal clear before I proceed that my channel is, and always has been, one of light and shade. If I think there's something worthy of criticising, I will. Same goes for defending. So you will see both of those elements within this broadcast. If you can't cope with that, and I'm speaking to a tiny minority of Fruit Loops, bugger off to another channel that appeases you. But I will be speaking as I find. And that includes my unique thoughts on the Bower biography, because already this week contradictions have emerged from his narrative, but I'll save that for later. And a case in point is the Duke of Haggard, the old preacher prince, because I have criticism for him and a slight defence of him to make. You know, when I watched that Nelson Mandela speech the other day, I scrolled down my notes and I came to you just a few minutes afterwards, directly afterwards, and I had noticed and told you about that dig that he made to the American Constitution, which was really a dig at the American people that don't toe the party line that he wants to toe. But even as I was recording and editing it, I thought, should I really include this? Am I really reaching here for something that is a much of a muchness. Well, I'm glad that I did include it, because then, within the next few hours and while I was editing, press reports began emerging that said exactly the same thing, and it became a huge story. America is angry, apart from the quarters of America that agree with Meghan and Harry, of course, and I can absolutely understand why they are angry, because he doesn't just speak in his personal capacity as a private citizen of Montecito, does he? This is the thing. He was introduced as the Duke of Sussex. He uses his noble title. This is what people like me can't abide. Because not only does it damage the reputation and the brand of the royal family, who are famously non-partisan, that is why they're able to congregate and host presidents and prime ministers and ambassadors from all around the world, from Putin to Obama, you know, the whole gamut. And if he doesn't want part of that, put those titles into abeyance and stop calling yourself a prince. It's really that simple. You'll get a lot less heat from those of us who don't like you, toting that around while insulting other people. You know, I don't take their personal views away. Do whatever you want, think whatever you think. I might agree with a lot of what you say. I might do, and I certainly might disagree with much of it as well. It's not about that. It's about having respect for not only your new host nation, as if you're speaking unanimously on everybody's behalf when you're actually not. It's also about respecting the nation that nurtured you and that hosts your royal family and the monarchy. It's about respect for the Commonwealth that you were previously ambassador of. All those Commonwealth realms, who all have completely different political leanings. It also overshadows the message at Nelson Mandela Day, doesn't it? I can understand when you're making a speech, you want to relate to it yourself and maybe put in a few gentle comparisons to your life and the life of the person that you're talking about, but really you want it to be about them, the way they inspire you, and not your personal convictions and your own axes to grind. It is so immature, it is so childish. All the P words come to mind except princely when I think about his behaviour. All the P words. Pontificating, poncy, pugnacious, preaching. That pugnacious prince is a problem. However, I am about to stick up for him on one topic, so for those of you that can't handle me having some nuance, it's time for you to depart, and gaily I bid you a wonderful day, my dears. Have fun. Have fun out there. The incident with the hand holding, with Meghan's clutch, that possessive clutch, I know that hit the headlines too, and she's received a lot of criticism for having a controlling, domineering personality over the guy. I watched snippets of the footage, not a lot, but I think I managed to see the main crux of that footage, and I have to say, although I'm sure that some of that domineering, commanding, controlling persona is present, I'm not denying that that is part of that relationship between the two of them and their chemistry. I have to say that I read it entirely different to many, many people, and I think that's because one person in particular, who is a treasured, beloved person in my life, who has been debilitated by anxiety and panic attacks, and we know, and we've been told, I think by Harry himself, that he suffers cruelly with these anxiety and panic attacks, and public speaking can be absolutely terrifying. Even for those of us who can speak confidently on camera or on stage, when you are faced with, let's say, a wedding congregation or giving a eulogy, or at work when you have to give a presentation, it can be absolutely terrifying, and a whole sort of flight and fight thing comes into play. That is what I saw in Harry, and what I saw from Meghan was her attempts at preventing any spasmodic event, because part of the fear of that comes into play when you're dreading a panic attack coming on Part of it is actually having to go through with the speech itself and putting yourself out there on the platform. But you also get a fear of the fear. You also become fearful of perhaps the humiliation, the embarrassment you might feel if you're about to just completely, if it's all about to hit the fan, because you feel like you're dying when you have a panic attack. And that is not an exaggeration. You feel like you're dying. And we know Harry suffers with this. I have always considered him a duke of lies, but that doesn't mean I think he lies about everything, and I include that. And I think that she was trying to comfort him, knowing how nervous he feels. And I think a lot of that consternation on his face comes from those fears. So I don't expect everybody to agree with me, but I do ask you not to harangue and harass me just for having a slightly different opinion than everybody else. And you may say he looked like he was trying to get away, he was uncomfortable, he kept snatching his hand away, and you're entitled to that opinion. But when I have personally nursed beloved people in my life through those kind of attacks, and it's happened quite frequently in my life, I've acted in precisely the same way. I recognise that behaviour, and I can tell you I wasn't trying to control or dominate them, my dear. Not at that particular moment anyway. I was trying to be of reassurance and of comfort. And it's not unusual at all for these restless folk to be rather fidgety at the time. They dined in Tribeca, I see, at Robert De Niro's restaurant, La Canda Verde. They were rather social. Once inside, I hear they wished somebody happy birthday when they saw the birthday cake. They drank wine, socialised with a couple of the guests. It is alleged that their security warned everybody there not to take photos, which sounds a bit heavy-handed. I can't imagine that they were that burly about it, but you never know with those two, do you? Although I've got to say, I wouldn't want to be snapped while dining in a private establishment, but again, I wouldn't send around heavies to tell everybody. So that seems a little bit overbearing. Harry rather looks good in blue, I think. I will give him that. Didn't look too bad, apart from all attention gets drawn to the shoes there. They're too light. I would have gone with a darker, perhaps a charcoal sort of canvas shoe. Not that particular shade, but it is what it is. As usual, I just wish he'd drop all the bangles. The bangles and all those kind of hippie accessories and elements that he insists on wearing. Again, it just goes with that sort of childish, immature, pugnacious persona that he has. He wears more baubles than a Christmas tree, doesn't he, at times? More baubles than a Christmas tree, that boy. And I've got to say the effect is rather fey. You may ask, how can I talk? Well, I'm a princess, so I get to wear all the paraphernalia, my dear, and all the drippings and all the gems. I'm a princess, my dear, so that's my right. That is my birthright. But for a prince, a signet ring on the pinky is fine. Prince Charles also wears his wedding ring on his pinky with the family crest on the pinky, because he doesn't want to spread out a great big collection of finger candy all over the place. So he made the unusual decision to wear his wedding band under his signet ring, his Prince of Wales signet ring, that once belonged to the Duke of Windsor. So that's rather classy. But we really shouldn't go in for all these adornments. It's rather fey on someone of aristocratic background, to be quite honest with you. Unless you're venturing into eccentricity. But he ain't an eccentric. He's just mad. Allegedly. I must admit that pouch that she was toting, that red one by Bottega Veneta, was really rather delicious. I'm very fond of Bottega, I must tell you. Not so much their recent seasons, but a lot of their vintage bags are really nice. She did well there. She emerged from the Crosby Hotel with her fellow activist, Gloria Steinem. I don't know anything about her, to be quite honest with you, my dear. I mean, she looks really rather cute, I must say. Oh, somebody had a go at me the other week because I called the Queen, or someone old I was referring to, I called them cute. Somebody complained in the comments that it was patronising to old people. I ask you. I didn't like those Bermuda shorts, even if they were by Dior. Now, the other thing that I noticed I was criticised for in my last video, quite unfairly I thought, was the fact that I said that I was rather cynical about Tom Bower's book coming out, that I was waiting until it's released to find out what's in it and what it says. I thought I was actually really rather rational, because I said to you, even though I'm not convinced that these revelations are going to be particularly explosive or perhaps might have a rather biased angle, I made it very clear and stated, literally, that I would be delighted if I was proved wrong, that I'm ready to be proved wrong, and it's just a matter of waiting and seeing what emerges and what he says and what any counter arguments come back. How is that irrational? How is that biased? What is wrong with healthy skepticism, especially when you're declaring that you're very happy to be proved wrong, and you might be. It's just my initial hunch. Anyway, we've already had the first rebuttal to one of the scenarios, one of the pictures that Mr. Bower has painted. We've already had it, apparently. You may have read about this, but the story that Mr. Bower has described with the Vanity Fair interview with the writer Sam Kashner, his version of events painted Meghan in a very negative light and involved a lot of the conversation between Meghan and Mr. Kashner. And I have no idea at this point if Mr. Kashner, this journalist, spoke to Tom Bower, but whether he did or not, he is not happy with the picture that's been painted so far in the excerpt from the Times. We still haven't seen the full excerpt, so maybe a fuller picture will be painted in the book. But the Times have printed a letter that they received from Sam Kashner, and I can only presume that it's a verified letter from him. I can't imagine why they would publish a letter from a Vanity Fair contributor without doing their homework and double checking that it is the same person. But again, I'm happy to be proved wrong there. But they received a letter from Sam Kashner, who entirely rebuffs Mr. Bower's account. In this letter he says, "Sir, I'm afraid Tom Bower didn't convey my admiration and respect for Meghan Markle in the excerpt from his new book The Times on Saturday," which was entitled "Writer Felt Manipulated by Meghan. "I found Miss Markle to be exceptionally warm and gracious, and admired her intelligence and her remarkable courage, as I still do. I regretted the oft-published account of challenging Procter & Gamble being edited out of my Vanity Fair article, because I had wanted to highlight her lifelong activism. The piece itself was quite laudatory. One more thing, I do not have a stutter. I may hem and haw a bit, but a stammer is not a stutter, and as far as I know, Miss Markle never said she liked me because of it. A belated congratulations to Prince Harry for taking such an extraordinary woman as his bride. Theirs is clearly a love match, so maybe we should stop piling on and letting the couple live their life in peace. Sam Kashner, Williamsburg, Virginia." Oh, I thought that was going to be Williamsburg, Brooklyn, which is a rather favourite place of mine to hang out at the dollar pizza bars. But Williamsburg, Virginia. Anyway, presuming that that is the real deal, what can I tell you, my dear? Now do you see why I have a healthy dose of scepticism? Now do you see why I'm not ashamed to be one of the, from what you tell me, one of the only commentators or one of the only press outlets that says, before you spend your pennies, you might want to wait and see. If you're happy, I've read these excerpts on the Times. I can understand that the whole book is going to be an entertaining romp. Some of his bitchy asides made me giggle. I understand that. But I'm not going to advocate for and promote to you a tome that A, I haven't read, and B, if what this chap says is true, and I have no reason to doubt him, I'm sure some of you will say he's been paid off, which I don't think is true whatsoever. This is just, in my opinion, if this is true, this is just another version of somebody presenting their truth as opposed to the truth, cherry-picking certain rumours or cherry-picking certain parts of interviews to paint the picture they want to paint because they know it'll sell well, and not just giving us some facts and truth. And I have got a feeling, I've got to tell you, that this is going to be the first of rather a lot of rebuffals This book is already going to sell by the bucket load. It's already a bestseller before release. It's already a great success. So what I say has absolutely no bearing on that success at all, and people can make up their own minds too. But if I were their publisher, I would be very nervous, because my hunch is that they will end up suing. I think that the Harkles will end up suing, because if more scenarios like this emerge where a picture has been willfully or intentionally painted to show them in a negative light, to portray conversations that happened in a very biased, unfavourable way, then the word libel might come into play, and it could get really rather vicious. And if they've got people like Sam Cashner backing them up, it's not going to help the publishers. You can't offer it either as a hagiography or the opposite, which is as a piece of disparagement, as if you're going in there looking for negativity, because that is a bias. That is playing to the crowd that you know is going to chime with you, to the crowd that you know is lucrative, because you know what they want to hear. And I'm going to be rather interested to see how people feel out there who have been hammering home all the conspiracy theories over the last few years about children being swapped and surrogacy and all the things, my dear, and supergluing people's eyes, all these conspiracy theories out there, because there's the same people who have been saying what a thorough, detailed, accurate, investigative journalist or writer Mr. Bower is. So I will be very interested to hear what they think if none of these things appear in his book. Because if there was truth in these things, why is he not going to report them without fear of being sued, or even point to the whispers about them? But maybe he will. Maybe that is what he's holding back. And I will be the first person on here to say, wow, you were right about your moon bumps. But conversely, if he doesn't mention any of those things, some of you might want to take stock and ask yourself why. Nobody's business. Says River, I disagree with most of what you were saying on this video, to the point that I had to stop watching. I've never done that with any of your other videos. I like that you have what can be called unpopular opinions, because I value everyone's ability to logically come to their own opinions, and often I agree with you. Although I'm fine when we don't have the same opinion, because you explain your reasoning and I respect that. Thank you. This video felt so dismissive of the Tom Bower book and the information in it that I didn't feel the need to continue watching. I actually wonder if you have a bias against him based on his previous criticisms against the royal family. I'm aware that he wrote about Prince Charles. I don't know what he said. That is all I'm aware of. I don't know anything he said negatively about the royal family. I promise you. I would just tell you now. I have absolutely no idea what he said, but you'll just have to take my word for that. Perhaps you can explore why you're so dismissive of the book. So my question to that small handful of you out there, and it was just a small handful, but one happens to notice these things, that either disparaged me or politely criticised me for having some kind of bias. Now that you see this correction coming out from the journalist Mr. Bower wrote about, can I ask you now, who has the bias? Is it me? Or is it Mr. Bower? Or is it you? Explore that. Now, regards to the remaining candidates for Prime Minister, there are only 2 candidates remaining now for the position of Prime Minister. And as you know, for the past couple of weeks, I've been discussing my favourite, who was Kemi Badenoch, and I was devastated when she missed out. She made it to the 4th out of 8 candidates, but didn't make the selection for the final 3. And in many ways it's a travesty, because she remains the surprise wild card of the race. When I first brought her to your attention, barely anybody had heard of her, but within the next 2 or 3 days her campaign accelerated, and in the last week she's enjoyed huge popularity and a sort of push for her momentum in the press. A huge push for her. She is the most popular. She polls the most popular with all the grassroots Tories, with everybody who is an actual member of the Conservative Party, the 200,000 people who make up that membership. She was the most popular. And there are those that have said the Conservative, those who were responsible for voting this week, the committees involved in that, made a huge mistake for not listening, because whoever they end up with now is, in my opinion, not going to be electable at the next general election, whereas Kemi Badenoch would have been a firecracker at the next general election. A firecracker. And she hasn't even had time to really dig herself into the public perception for them to all see what she's made of, see what she can offer. So I was rather devastated when she missed the opportunity, but I'm trying to console myself with the fact that perhaps it was just not her time, and she perhaps will benefit from more experience as part of the cabinet if she is promoted to a more senior position over the next couple of years. But everybody, and I mean everybody, is saying that her star is only on the rise, and that if she doesn't become Prime Minister at some point in the future, it would be rather unusual, because she's quite unique. Yesterday, the record was smashed for the hottest temperature ever recorded in the United Kingdom at 40 degrees. Yes, we know it gets much hotter in other places, but we don't care. We're talking about Britain, which isn't prepared for that kind of weather. Tarmac's been melting. Entire villages have gone up in flames, my dear. It's heartbreaking, actually. People have been drowning because they've been jumping in rivers and lakes, this kind of thing, and not understanding that no matter how very hot it is outside, some of these rivers and estuaries and lakes still have freezing cold water, and they jump in and their body goes into shock and they panic and they drown. And it's absolutely devastating, and it's been happening with some young people mainly, I believe. So it poses all kind of risks. Thankfully for me, who, as you know, despises hot weather, has been having a really lovely week. You know, I've got plenty of electric fans at home. I'm always prepared, you see. This is the thing, because I loathe it even when it's kind of rather milder than it's been this week. I'm always prepared, because I've got I don't like perspiring at all, so I have plenty of fans. And yesterday I was lucky enough to spend some time in the country at a really beautiful country house, a rather aristocratic one, I've got to tell you, close to the New Forest. And it was just absolutely exquisite. Even though it was the hottest day of the year and you'd think that I would go into an emotional meltdown, I was out in the midday sun, like only fools and Englishmen. But of course I was slathered with sunblock as usual, but also just beautifully in the shade in an English country garden. The stillness, even the usual sounds of summer weren't there, because even the wildlife wasn't prepared for this temperature that it experienced. The stillness was really a thing of beauty, as was this garden that I was sat in, with a jug of cherryade at my side, in the shade, naturally under the shade of a large parasol, but also under the boughs of beautiful trees. So obviously I wasn't sitting out in direct sunlight, but just enjoying this panoramic view of an idyllic countryside scene in a temperature that has never been recorded in modern times, or indeed since temperatures were able to be recorded. So rather perversely for me, I've been having a really lovely week, which also happens to be my birthday week, as you know, my birthday season, my dear. So be nice to me, be kind to me, my dears, even if I piss you off. Remember that every princess has to have their day, don't they, with my birthday gems. So I'm going to continue to enjoy my birthday week, and again, I thank you sincerely if you've sent me a tip for my birthday. I was able to have a nice coffee and a pan of chocolate every day this week, as well as my find from the vintage fair on you. So thank you, fruities. I'm really not that horrible, you know. I just have to camp it up for the broadcasts, and you know, some of you really can be rather lovely and welcoming, even if you don't agree with me, and all embracing. And the only ones that I have to reprimand on occasion are Fruit Loops, to be honest with you. Toodle Pip, my dears, and Pip Squeak.